all right. Hey, how's it going? This is Horror Talk Radio. I'm your host, MrDeadman. And tonight we're talking about horror writing, horror movies, and the writing submission process. Our guest tonight is Logan Noble. How's it going?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
Hey, I'm glad to have you. It's good to have you here. And it's good to talk about I feel like tonight we're going to get into some of the details of horror writing and the submission process, all that. Also have some fun talking about horror movies and all that. Let's see, quick announcement. Oh, okay. This show is sponsored by Monsters Exist. Dead Man's Home Monsters Exist. This book here contains stories based on cryptids. If you don't know what a cryptid is, I think you do, son. I think you do. They're like Bigfoot. They're like Chupacabra. They're like the things they say don't exist, but you know they do, son. You know they do. There's like over 14 stories in this book. They're all themed around it. Really, really great stories. You're definitely going to enjoy it. It's on Amazon. You get an ebook, paperback. Check it out. All right. With that out of the way, I guess the sponsor, non-sponsor tonight is going to be Kraken Black Roast Rum. I'll be taking a shot of that. While Logan Noble, are you ready for the big question?
Let's do it.
Who's your daddy and what does he do?
Who's my daddy and what does he do? We talking my literal father, or are we talking about somebody else? I guess that'll be the question.
I thought you were a married man. I don't know if you have another daddy.
Yeah. Huh? Well.
Okay. Sorry. I look at the question wrong. Sorry. It's who are you and what do you do?
Oh,
Sometimes
okay.
I forget.
Gotcha. Oh,
Yeah.
Perfect. That's what I had in my notes here. Okay, gotcha. So I'm Logan Noble. I'm a horror fiction writer. Nonfiction writer, reader, and gamer.
I like how you added gamer at the end of that.
Oh yeah, gotta have it out there. People gotta know what I'm up to.
All right, let's table all the writing stuff. Let's talk about video games. Pew pew pew. What's your favorite video game?
Ooh, favorite video game? That's a big question. Honestly, like if we were going GOAT, it might be Skyrim, right? Elder Scrolls.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Classic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to beat that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially when they release it every couple of years again,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good one. Okay. So, how long have you been writing for?
So I've been writing for, most of my life, since I was a kid. So I just think over time the focus has changed. So at first I think it was just a lot of like fantasy type stories, whatever I was reading as a kid. And then as time went on, I started writing some horror. I think it started with like Goosebumps and things like that. Once I started reading that, it changed my influence. Yeah, but I've been publishing for about 6 years. My first story was, back then.
Okay. So you were writing for a while. I mean, writing as a child. You got into horror because, through Goosebumps, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what was it about horror that really drew you to it?
Honestly, that's a great question in that, I'm not entirely sure. I look at it now and I see what interests me in the genre, and I have to wonder if that's what it was. I'm a person that I see all the horror tropes, the haunted houses, isolated locations, killers, monsters, demons, and all that stuff. I just feel like has always spoken to me in an odd way. And to be able to write in that genre and use those things to express, themes and feelings and, create characters that are in these situations. It's just always, it felt like the best way to kind of express what I'm feeling.
Well, they say write what you know, and if you are familiar with ghost houses and killers and stuff, then that's what you know, man.
That's what I know, yeah.
So
I haven't had as bad of a luck as some of my characters in my stories, so.
I'd hope so. I mean, the common myth or stereotype or trope or whatever is that horror authors they have deep-seated issues that they're trying to overcome, and they sort of just dump it out in their work.
Oof, man, that's a good one. It's funny because I'd expect most horror writers to be kind of like creepy, odd people, but generally you meet us and we're like nice folk, regular folk that probably do have some stuff in our closet, but unlike some people that exist out in the world, we might address those things a little better than some.
Maybe I can see that. Maybe be more adjusted after dumping all those sort of emotions, those feelings, and exploring those thoughts. The other thing is that it could be, look who's judging who. If the creepy are judging the creepy, if the crazy are judging the crazy. Well, they're going to look same. No, but I hear you on that. I hear you. Okay. Now, I mean, I have to explore this just a little bit. So, I mean, is there a deep-seated call? Is there a deep-seated issue that draws you towards horror?
Oh man, honestly, no. I had a relatively normal childhood. I grew up kind of a rural area, and let me try to comb my mind here. I honestly can't think of anything. Oddly enough, I know that's not particularly fascinating.
Hey,
normal life leading to stuff, but yeah.
That means I don't have to break out the couch for you. You're good. You're good.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That I don't need to worry about that. All right. So now let's talk about your work here. So you have a handful of short stories that have been published in various anthologies. Let's explore some of those titles there. Which one that really jumps to mind? If someone's new to Logan Noble, like what stores should they read and where would they find it?
The one I always point people to is a story called The Mouth That Opens.
The Mouth That Opens.
It was published.
Okay.
Mouth That Opens. It was published in Sanitarium magazine in I think it was January of last year. Sanitarium, I think, had just relaunched, it was like their big relaunch issue.
And good for them. It is a hard world out there.
Oh yeah, it's brutal.
It's hard.
But I think that's a good story to kind of start people off with. One of the reviewers that kind of reviewed that issue of Sanitarium said that my story had David Lynch vibes.
Oh,
which
nice.
is high praise. I might have that put on my tombstone. That's too good.
So yeah, tell us a little bit more about this, The Mouth That Opens. What's going on with that story?
So it was originally written for an anthology of lost films. It's kind of like a themed story. And it's about an academic who receives an invitation to see a special film screening for a film that was essentially lost to time. And there's some kind of, odd rumors about the story. The people that saw it went missing, back in the day. And for this academic, it's the perfect opportunity to see a legend on the big screen.
Okay. Let's explore this. Let's get a little bit deeper here, because when you say it's a lost film, like what comes to mind? I think found footage, but it's not a found footage thing. It's not like the Blair Witch or something where they found the footage and they show it. Is it more like kind of like The Ring, where they have this footage and it's like cursed or something like that, or?
Yeah, so it's if you look throughout kind of history and film history, a lot of times, back when they were relying on the reels and things like that, a lot of times if those, reels got burned up or went missing, or they just didn't make enough of them, if those reels went missing, the film was essentially lost to time. Every couple of years we get a movie from some big director that, no one thought we'd ever find, and, somebody has some film reels in their attic somewhere. So a lost film is essentially something that somebody at some point made this film and people might have seen it, and then it was lost to, the ages. And in this one, it was a French experimental film from the 70s.
Oh, wow. Wait, when you say French experimental film, you're not talking about a porn, are you?
Nope, not at all. It's very, I wouldn't say it's PG-13, but it's not particularly erotic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say French, when you say French and
some people might be into it.
Oh.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You're like, yeah.
Interesting. Now, are there particular aspects of horror that this short story really, really explores? It sounds like dread of the unknown, or just just tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I think the story definitely falls into the cosmic horror genre there. That's the wonderful thing about horror is we have so many subgenres and different interests inside the genre as a whole, which I think is pretty cool. But this one, I wouldn't say it's Lovecraftian, but I think cosmic may be the best word.
Cosmic. Okay.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know what cosmic horror is, and when you say cosmic horror, I mean, of course, you and I know, but it's horror that's beyond just our earthly realm. It involves, well, as the name implies, cosmic. It's space. It's not really. It's not necessarily sci-fi, but it could be sci-fi.
It's fear of the unknown, right? The universe is vast and unknowing, and the scary thing is the universe might not care about us, and there's fear there. And not only will the universe not care about us, it could be openly hostile to us as human beings, right? I think Lovecraft, he's his own genre, but he's cosmic in that, there's elder gods and great gods somewhere out there that, don't care if we live or die.
That's right. That's right.
Pretty scary.
That is a scary concept on its own, especially for those that listen to this that are, maybe they believe in God, whether Christian or Jewish or whatever. Just imagine that God just not caring about you at all.
Oh yeah,
you're nothing.
Frightening.
You're nothing. You're not even an ant. You are nothing.
Yep. Scary.
Mm-hmm. That's something right there that, like, I don't know how you would handle that situation. Like, imagine of us as a whole society. I mean, like, somehow we got letters or I guess messages, text messages. I don't know how this works. Snapchat from God saying, I've been alive this whole time, and I get this guy is, I don't care about y'all.
If we direct him as a PM.
Yeah, a DM. They gave us a DM.
DM, that's right.
A DM and a dick pic. It's like
from the other side.
Yeah, I don't care about you guys. I never did. And stop saying that I do. Imagine that. Like, what would happen if
the world? Oof.
If this message was received by like all existing nations right now,
it'd be pandemonium. It would be in the streets. It would be complete chaos.
Right. It'd be crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. People are like, what's the freaking point? So, some people would do that. Some people would be like,
why are we here?
Yeah. Dude, it'd be total anarchy. It'd be wild, Oh, man. Now, and so in this short story, it kind of explores that, but in a different way, because it's related to that film. So whatever's in that found footage in that film, in that ancient film that was lost to time, is something that really challenges the main character, or the protagonist in the story.
Absolutely. And one thing I like about the story, when I wrote it and when I look back on it here, is that I really play with what reality is. And so the film, after the protagonist sees it, and maybe even a little bit before, reality is already starting to shift for him. And he ends up in some pretty wild places after he sees the film. And I don't want to spoil anything, but it's not a good place to be.
Okay. Man. I know you don't want to spoil it. And with short stories, it's so easy to get all the info because, it's that's what I like about a short story. It's a lot of information, but condensed, it's like.
Absolutely.
So you definitely don't want to give away the money shot. You don't want to give that away. But if there was you might have already said it. I don't know. But if there was like an elevator pitch you can give to someone that was on the fence about this story, what would it be?
Ooh, well, elevator pitch. So the film that he sees is, it's this lost film, and it's about a tall figure in a carnival, right? And he's a traveling salesman that gets lost and ends up at this carnival, and things are not as they seem, right? And when our protagonist goes and sees it, he starts to realize that his life is being intermingled with this film without him even realizing it.
Oh, wow.
And there's a little bit of body horror involved. The reason it's called The Mouth That Opens is, this film has some content in which people essentially, grab the bottom of their jaw and grab the top of their jaw and just start pulling, and they continue pulling, and their mouth. Oh yeah, it's pretty brutal, in a pretty horrific way. So as this man goes along, he has a female coworker that he's friends with, and she gets pulled into it as well, and there might not be a way out for him.
Oh wow, that's pretty wild. So his life becomes part of the film. So the film, it changes and stuff like throughout the story, or he notices things that he missed.
So you don't get too many details of what is actually on the film itself. You just get the the smallest details. But then as he's going about his life and the kind of action after he sees it, he begins to remember things from the film, and he'll see a clown on a street corner, and he'll hear music, and he'll see just odd colors and things that are not supposed to be there. Right? It's that horror of the unreal.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Mouth That Opens, it sounds like a really good story, and like you said, it was the place to start. If you're new to Logan Noble. If you're new to Logan Noble, who's definitely not Logan Paul. Logan Paul is a giant douche.
Big time. Yeah, big time.
He's worse than a douche. Okay. He's the receptacle that all the douches drain into. Okay.
Yeah.
Like the mega douche.
The mega douche.
Yeah. Now, that's the first story. Now let's say, okay, I really like this. Where should I go after that? And where can they find that story?
So another one I wanted to bring up is this one's actually free online, so you can go and read it basically whenever you want. And it's called the Eldritch Film Club.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's they're both kind of film adjacent stories, but which I didn't particularly intend, but it's kind of a good place to start it anyway.
Were you like in the AV club in high school?
I wish. If my high school had an AV club, I would have been all over it.
Right. My high school didn't have that. My high school had a daycare.
A daycare?
A daycare, not an AV club. People were into doing other things. Anyway, but I like that. The Eldritch Film Club.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of why, for some reason, have you ever played the game Doki Literature Club?
No, but I'm aware of like how popular it is. I've seen footage and like kind of read about it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to decide if it's my thing or not. It seems so odd, but it's also fascinating. So.
I know this is kind of a weird segue. It's heavily animated. It's a visual novel. Okay, it's a visual novel,
right.
A lot of text. But the part that really is important is how the game will like delete itself, and the game kind of is a virus onto itself. Not for your computer, okay, but the game will will create files and delete characters and all that stuff. But so that part was very interesting. I've never seen a game do that, where you actually had to go into the game files and delete those files to get the good ending. It was very weird, but kind of cool. All right, but the reason why I was thinking of that, I think it was the word club. And so what I'm getting at here is, in the Eldritch Film Club, is it a dude who's new to the club who has to try his chances with some hot goth chick?
That might make an interesting sequel. Maybe we'll have to address that later.
Okay.
But no, yeah, this one is first of all, it's a story written in the second person.
That is hard to do.
And that's a challenge, and it's something that I don't know if we'll get into it later, but publishing advice, a lot of people tell you to avoid it, which is probably sound advice. But I think for me, like, I worked hard on the story, and I think it came out pretty well.
I think second person could probably do well as an audio book. Imagine that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that'd be great.
Especially with like hypnotic music in the background.
Yeah.
You find yourself waking up.
It hit you personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Find yourself waking up in the middle of the night, there's a man standing over your bed. What do you do? It's like a choose your own adventure book right there.
Yeah, love it.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more about this Eldritch Film Club. What's going on there?
Yeah, so essentially you're put in the shoes of a member of this Eldritch Film Club, who he basically gets together with a bunch of other people, and they watch, they just watch like Lovecraftian horror films, like Dagon, or the Carpenter one that I'm blanking on the name of it.
The Thing.
The Thing, yep. And then he has another one too that has. It was one he made a few years later. Anyway, I'm blanking on it. But it's basically Lovecraftian films. And when he arrives for this film club, he
the
notices
Mouth of Madness.
Yes. The Mouth of Madness, I believe. We were just talking about the mouth that opens, and I think my brain was intermingled with that. So, yeah. But yeah, he arrives at this club, and he begins to realize that it's not like the normal people. Suddenly there's, dozens of people at this club, and, it's kind of throws him off for a second, and he begins to realize that something is very amiss, and they're showing a feature that somebody may have brought that they probably shouldn't be viewing, and, bad things happen.
Oh, no, I'm curious about this feature here.
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell me it's if you tell me what this feature is, does it take away too much from the story?
No, I don't think so. You mentioned The Ring earlier, and through this, it's a really short story. So a good portion of the story is kind of talking about what the film is, and I did my best to recreate kind of like an experimental Ring-esque picture with Lovecraftian themes, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of Lovecraft and Lovecraftian stories, is there one that's like your favorite?
Oh yeah. I love The Color Out of Space.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think to me that's like peak Lovecraftian or peak Lovecraft. Call of Cthulhu is great, stuff like that. But I think for me, I think he hit a stride there with The Color Out of Space.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. It's a good one. It has pretty good pacing in it too.
Mm-hmm.
With Lovecraft, he does seem to be very verbose. I mean, you could cut out. He keeps on hammering on. I get it that you are afraid of this thing that we shouldn't know, we shouldn't see, but tell us what it is.
please tell us. Yeah, we've been waiting. Yeah.
Now, we could talk here about the horror writing process. Really, horror writing in itself. Well, let's get into that. Like, why writing? We talked about horror, but why writing? Because writing is a very solitary craft. At least it's seen to be, right? It's kind of yourself, your thoughts, your ideas. But why pursue that? Like, what's going on there?
So I think, like you said, writing is a very solitary thing. I think as time goes on, obviously I can't speak to before my generation, but I think it's gotten easier and easier to find like-minded people that you can talk about, horror with and writing with. I think like as every year goes on and we get more apps and websites and workshops and conventions, it makes it a little less solitary.
Right.
And, there's a cliche about the drunk writer, right? The depressed writer. And
I might be that cliche.
Yeah, right. I think we all exhibit a few of those sometimes, because, like you said, it's a lonely thing sometimes, and creatives as a whole, have those tendencies, right? It's the same thing for filmmakers, musicians. They all kind of exhibit those things.
Yeah, we need our space.
But I think,
give me my damn space, man. Yeah.
You need that space, and I think it's important for creatives to have that time to develop their ideas and, kind of find their voice. But the question as to why, we're writers or artists, you have something, you have a voice and you need to get it out there. I think that's why we do it.
Okay. And doing this, you've read a number of stories, probably a lot more stories than what were published. Just going by statistics, just stats. So, tell me about the submission process. How it was for you?
Sure. So it's challenging. I think the hard part about the submission process is it's just so slow, right?
Yes.
It can take months, and you'll work on a story for a month, 2 months, potentially years, depending what it is. And then you start that process. And over time, my approach to it has changed. I think initially I kind of would just write a story and then just throw it to the four winds, just submit it everywhere. Which is fine, but it's, as time went on, I've changed my approach, and I have a small system that I put into place that I think helps me, at the very least, put up good numbers and, hit my specific submission quotas that I want to.
Right. And you're correct that it's a very slow process. And depending on when you started doing it, because, things have changed. It used to be just snail mail. You'd have to get the stamps, get the envelope, get an envelope inside the big envelope with a stamp in it. And if you want to receive the story back, that's when you actually sent the story in, or a part of the novel in. That process was annoying, and it cost you money. At least now it doesn't cost you money. It's still annoying because you try to get a list of the place to send to, and sometimes that list has closed places. Some listings are just no longer useful at the time. I'm sure you've been through that experience.
Oh yeah, no, I've submitted stories to I think it's a magazine of fantasy and science fiction. They still take snail mail submissions.
Are you shitting me, son?
They sure do, and they are a huge magazine. I mean, they're like massive, and they pay like incredibly well. So I'm like, in that case, I'm like, worth it.
Yeah, they're definitely worth getting in with them. I think the reason why they take snail mail still is because of tradition. Because
it's gotta be.
Yeah. Oh man.
I don't know why you would put yourself through the snail mail process as, an editor or somebody. And because you edit books, and can you imagine having to wait to get all these by mail, and you got to sort out all these papers?
I couldn't. And I'm glad I'm having this conversation. I like it because I kind of find myself in the middle of transition, if you will, like kind of focusing more efforts on doing hard talk radio, more of the podcast, more of the shows, and less of the publishing scene. Not because I have anything, there's no bad blood or any, ill will or anything. It's just my personal passion, if you will. It's a lot of money. It's very expensive, publishing, and there's, even for a publisher, and the money involved in it, it's not as lucrative, or it's not lucrative really. It's more of like a passion project that my publishing side was anyway. So, but yeah, I totally understand that the submission process can be very slow, and you run into things as scenarios where people just no longer take the submission. I mean, that's one reason why I started publishing in the first place, was because back, I think 2012 or around that time, when I started really looking around where I can submit stories, I noticed that a lot of these lists have dead links, or journals or anthologies, magazines that are just no longer good. They closed up shop. And I was like, I could take a stab at this. I could try this. So
yeah, absolutely.
So where do you go? Like where do you go to find where to submit stories?
So I have a couple places. I think the number one thing that I can recommend is, if you have things like Facebook, starting there, there is countless groups that are dedicated to, markets for story submissions.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's a great place to start. And if you're a horror writer, and if you listen to this podcast, I assume you or at least have some interest in horror, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another good place to go is there's darkmarkets.com.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a good one. And then horrortree.com.
Mm-hmm.
Both very similar, where publishers go and they, list their calls.
That's right. Yeah, I've been to them a number of times, a handful of submissions. Very helpful. Very helpful.
They kind of help, and I think it's difficult sometimes for publishers to get the word out. So places like that help. And one other one too I wanted to mention was Duotrope.
Duotrope is good. Now, do they charge a fee now?
I think they do. Yeah, they didn't used to, and I've had them for a long time. But I think I don't know when it was, but it's like $5 or something. Which, if you're not submitting a lot and you don't have a lot of stories out in the world, it's probably not worth it.
But it's $5 a month, right?
Yeah, I like it because it's nothing, and it helps kind of corral all of my different stories and can tell me where I've submitted, and I have a long list of like favorite markets that have all of the submission guidelines right there. So it's convenience.
I mean, I know people gripe about Duotrope charging money, but honestly, if you have enough money to get a soda from a convenience store, come on, we're just talking $5 a month. $5 a month, man. Come on.
Yeah, that's an iced coffee when you're on your way to work, right?
Yeah. Okay, but I think the part about the submission process that a lot of people have a problem with is the lack of feedback, the lack of communication, it's not transparent. You don't know if they actually read it. You get this letter it seems like it just applies to all. I'm sure you've had that experience. Tell me a little bit about that and how you deal with it.
Yeah, so I'll say up front, like I'm aware that these publishers and these magazines and such are run by people. And so, I would allow we don't have empathy for what they go through. They sometimes get hundreds to thousands of submissions. And I'm aware that they can't always give you personal feedback. And that's not my expectation. That's a lot of time for them. If I was doing something like that, I wouldn't have the time either. That being said, you mentioned stories being sent back and you're like, did they read this? You'll get a rejection in like an hour. There's one particularly famous magazine, which I won't name because I'd like to publish with them one day, maybe. They send submissions. I'm sorry, they send rejections in like less than an hour. Like I got a rejection from them in like 10 minutes.
Oh,
and
dang.
That's pretty fast, pretty savage. But yeah, it's
that's
not
cold,
always that
man.
way.
They just took a look at the name. They look at your name and they're like, hey, no, man. We have too many Logans here.
Yeah, sorry, man. You're out. We don't like this title. Yeah. Best of luck.
That's cold. Less than 10 minutes. What? Yeah, it's in different publishers. They operate in their own way. I mean, they're all human. Of course, that line is so silly. We're all human. Of course, we're all human. I mean, what?
Of course we are.
Are we lizard people? So, but yeah, I mean, they all have their own things. Like some of them actually have day jobs or night gigs that they do to help fund the whole thing. So they have, their mind is on different things and different stressors in their life. I get that. But the lack of communication, it has to grind your gears a lot, right?
Oh yeah. And it's, on the other side of getting a rejection in 10 minutes, you have places that hold on to a story for like a year or 8 months. I think the longest I've had a story held on to, and it was eventually published, thankfully. But they held the story for it was like a year and a half.
Now, when they held it, did they already give you the contract and go through all that and do?
No, that was before contract.
Okay, because I'm currently in a project right now called Hollywood Holocaust. It's titled off of Duke Nukem, the first level Hollywood Holocaust, and also all the stories are about Hollywood celebrities getting their due in various ways. So I was like, okay, it'd be fun.
Oh, nice. Okay.
That project was in the summer. It's still not out yet. The cover should be ready this month and should be out this month, I'm hoping. But all those submissions, the people that have been selected, been paid for, it was a token payment. They received their payment and the contracts are all up. It's just, of course, their concern is like, where is it? It's like, I'm just waiting on the cover, and it's worth the wait. Be worth the wait because the cover looks great. And some additional art. So, but you're talking about they wanted you to put on hold, put yourself on hold, but without a contract, with nothing there. That has to be tough. That has to be really tough.
Yeah, it was bad. Yeah, and I've received rejections also where I had to wait almost a year. But like you said, it's I'm not waiting on. They haven't reached back out to us and said, hey, if we still have your story, like that's okay. We're you're in the final cut or whatever. It was essentially like radio silence for a long time, and you'll there's always that question of like, do I send an email, right? Do I send an email to be like, hi, very nice, polite email, but you want to check on the status of the story because a lot of times publishers also say, no simultaneous submissions, which I think that annoys me to no end. That's probably my biggest gripe in the publishing community is that little caveat.
Yeah, and how they even check that, no simultaneous, which means you can't submit to someone else while they're looking at the story, but it's like, how are they even going to know that? Unless you turn around and say, oh, by the way, actually, I'm going to go ahead and withdraw. The story's been accepted elsewhere. They'll be like, okay, well, we're going to put you on a blacklist. You're no longer going to... I mean, come on. It's so silly.
Exactly, yeah. And they say that publishing is like a small community, but also like you're right. Like they're not really going to know. I don't think editors are talking to each other like that.
Well, I look at it like this. Like you guys, I mean, authors, writers, they need to make money too. They need to pay bills. And if they want to put their story out there in multiple places and one accepts it faster than the other, then that sucks on the other. The other can't cry about that. They took they took way too long to read it. It's like they want to punish you because they were lazy or maybe they had other things to do, other priorities before they got to you, but they lost your story. Someone else got it. And now that they read it, now they want it, but it's too late, so sad, it's gone, I kind of feel there's a lot of things that editors and publishers do that kind of penalize the writer. And, which things are changing. Things have changed to where anymore, the conversations I've had with many, many authors here on the show, like self-published ones and people that are really indie, I'm seeing it where it's like, the day of the publisher, it's coming to an end, man. It's coming to an end. I don't know when it's going to be, but more people are waking up. I'm going to get some flack about that. I do. But I say this as someone who's aware that a publisher is kind of like a middleman. It's just a middleman that will help you, if they're doing it right, try to help you put more push in a book that you have or a story that you have. That's how I see it, and maybe they have connections, maybe they have a way of, get your book in the stores and all that, but things are changing now with COVID. Maybe, I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Maybe
no, I think you're right. Yeah. I think it used to be like there was only a handful of publishers, right? And if they didn't publish your books, you were nothing, right? I think that's the way people viewed it. But now, like you said, like those publishers, while still huge, and that's probably where most of the money is. I think self-publishing and then like small presses, have completely changed the way we think about publishing. In my mind, like it's not the big publishers that are putting out the best work, at least in the horror genre. It's places like Undertow or Dark Regions Press, right? Mm-hmm. These small indie publishers that, really understand what makes the horror genre great and really understand what people actually want to read.
Right. Right. I mean, it's with the indie press that you're actually getting content, getting books that are really pushing the envelope, going further. They're not afraid to be offensive. They're not afraid to especially when horror, because it's very important, guys. I know people are very PC now more than ever, afraid of hurting someone's feelings. But if you are a horror author, you're writing disturbing stuff anyway. You're writing about serial killers, murderers, and you're writing about horrible things. Right?
Yeah.
You're going to offend somebody. I mean, there's going to be an element there. You might have a character who's racist or a character who does some bad things to kids or something. But it's like, okay. I mean, if it's important to the story, and it's a story worth reading, worth telling, it's through indie publishing that you're really going to get that story out there. The mainstream guys are not going to touch that stuff unless you're Stephen fucking King.
Yep.
Stephen King, he has children being victimized in his books. He has children. He has a little girl in It that was ran train, not a gangbang, ran train. Every kid took turn with her. And that's mainstream. That's mainstream right there. That's a lot of people's favorite Stephen King book right there.
That's a blockbuster King. That's one of his most famous books. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I didn't bring that up to shame or whatever, but that scene is what it is, and it had a purpose in the story. It may not make sense in hindsight, but with Stephen King, the way he explained it was, I could see how even the girl would think that makes sense with what she went through. But anyway, my point was.
I have to imagine some cocaine might have been involved on Stephen King's end, maybe.
Probably.
Because it was the 80s, right? And we knew he liked his cocaine. So.
Oh, yeah, he did.
Mm-hmm.
And the point was that it's through indie publishing that you're going to get that flexibility, that ability to really go all the way on expressing yourself, and that you don't have to worry
Absolutely.
about. I mean,
you don't have to worry about marketing and because a lot of times those big publishers, they want stories that hit all the demographics, right? That are lowest common denominator. In that it's safe horror fiction, quote unquote.
Right.
And like you said, those small publishers is where it's at. When I have my collection available next year for submission process, I'm still working on getting stories together. But when I have it ready, I'm sending it to small publishers, guaranteed.
Now, have you had that sort of problem with any of the publishers you submitted stories to? Have they given you any sort of feedback or rejected due to content?
No, I've never had that issue, thankfully. So most of my fiction, it's not, it has gore and it has violence and sexual content, but I don't often dive into the more explicit stuff. It's just not the kind of fiction that I write. But that would be interesting to see. I would be curious to see what horror publishers are doing that, and that baffles me a little bit. I understand having, catering to certain audience, and not wanting to go certain places, but that's kind of a curious thing to me.
Yeah, I know there's some horror authors or publishers that they would put in their submission guidelines, like, we don't want any of this. We don't want stories that victimize women. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like, okay. All right, I get you there. You don't want any more stories that victimize women. Don't want any more stories that victimize kids or dogs, or that you gotta make sure you meet the quota. Have at least a lesbian character, a gay character, a trans character. But when my story takes place in a small Texas town, and there's, from my experience, just maybe one gay dude there, and probably. But the town you want me to write about is going to have a gay dude, a trans dude, a lesbian, and a bisexual, and a pedophile. And then they're openly embracing. It's weird. It's like the things they want. It's like, guys, who's writing the story here? And by the way, when I say that, I'm not shaming, I'm not blaming or anything about with including gay characters, lesbian characters, and all that. Sure, you can do that if that's your thing. My thing is, when the editors say, we have this quota, we didn't meet this number of things, we want the story to be in this way. I mean, it's their right, they could do that, but it seems weird that they are putting those restrictions. It just seems kind of weird to me.
It is odd. And, I'm trying to think the way that I like to view this, because for me, if the publisher's putting that stuff out there, they must have a reason for it. And you know what? I respect their reasoning and why they want to do that. But if I don't have a story that fits what they want, and if it's not worth it to me to try to change my work for that, then I'm not going to do it.
Right.
And I think that's what it boils down to.
Right.
There's plenty of publishers that, I don't want to say penalize, but there's plenty of publishers that, have a little more open stuff. And, I would just suggest send to them instead.
Now, we got a question in the chat from Denise Noble. Are you currently working on anything right now that we could expect to see anytime soon?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. So I think for me, I'm working on a bunch of different projects. I have about 10 stories out on submission right now. And a few of them are for pretty big kind of dream publishers. So fingers crossed on that. I have, as far as like stories that are coming out in the near future, I have a short story being published in an Executor Publishing anthology.
Okay.
And the anthology, it's the theme is hometown. So they wanted stories about hometowns.
Hometowns. Like.
Yep. So I wrote a story for that because I'm from a small town in Michigan. So I wrote a horror story featured in my hometown.
Oh, okay, I get it. They want stories featured from your hometown. Okay.
Yeah. Which is kind of interesting. And then I also have a story coming out. There was a tribute anthology for Joe Pulver, who a horror writer who passed away a few months ago. So they put out a call for that to help pay for his medical and funeral costs.
Oh, that's good.
So so a really cool project.
Remind me again. Remind me that, because I do read. There's a lot of authors. There's a lot of books out there. But remind me what books he did.
So Joe Pulver, he was an editor and also a writer. So his big thing was he was a big King in Yellow guy.
Okay.
Robert W. Chambers. So
that's right.
His story is generally focused around that. Yeah.
Okay.
So
the King. Okay.
King in Yellow stuff. Yeah.
That's where the name sounded familiar. I was like, okay. Well, and you said you're working on 10 different stories at one time?
Yeah, so I have 10 out on submission right now. So they're all done. They're just out in the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there you have 10 out right now. How many stories are you working on right now?
So I'm working on a couple of kind of interesting things. I started kind of a micro collection that I plan on self-publishing sometime in 2021. So I'm kind of working on getting that situated. So on top of that, I'm also getting together stories and putting some finishing touches on my first collection that I want to get submitted out sometime next year as well. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Man. So you're very busy. That's good. Constantly working, getting content out there and putting it out there. Do you find that difficult to shift from writing and creating and then managing and submitting? Do you find that difficult?
Oh yeah. No, I have a full-time job, right? I work Monday through Friday, and then, publishing and writing and doing all that feels like a full-time job in and of itself. So I find my time, when I come home or on lunch, or if I have a spare second at work to send a quick email, I'll do so. But yeah, it's a tricky balance. And then also you have social media, and you got to get your websites, you got to keep them updated. So it's a lot. It can be overwhelming sometimes.
Oh yeah, I bet. I mean, how do you find time for much of anything? I guess you said video games earlier, but do you have time to even play games?
I do. Yeah. It's generally, when I come home from work, and there comes a point in the day where I'm like, I have no mental energy left. I'm essentially spent here. So, and that's usually where I find my gaming time.
Gonna play more rounds of Halo.
That's right. I need to turn my brain off and play Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That is a good game.
Yeah, that's what I'm playing right now. So,
man, that is a good one. All right. Anyway, I can get lost in games. I really could. But it's hard talk.
Oh yeah.
Hard talk radio, not game talk radio. Though I did have
Exactly.
I don't know. Have you ever played the game Dusk?
I have not, but I listened to your episode that you did with the creator of Dusk.
Yeah.
And I immediately added that game to my endless backlog, list of games I want to play. It just it sounds fascinating.
The graphics might not seem all that. It's very Quake 1 in the graphics.
Sure.
But, oh man, it is fast paced. It is fun. It is, and that's all you want from a game, right? You want it fun.
Yeah.
Is it playable? Is
Absolutely.
it fun? Is it? It's great. Anyway, so where do your monsters come from? And this question actually comes from Sam Noble. Where do your monsters come from?
Great question. I think for me, it's I pull from so many different medias, and then as well as kind of just where I'm leaning on. This kind of falls in the realm of where do your ideas come from, right? A classic question. And I think for me, it's what interests me. Like when I think of what I find scary, or the design of a monster that I find intriguing, I do my best to create something in that vein. And I think too, when I'm writing a story, if I have a prompt, Mouth That Opens is about lost films, right? So when I have a prompt or I have a base idea for a story, if that story demands a monster, I look and see what I'm trying to express in that story, and the monster evolves from there.
Okay.
And I think a good example of that is, you look at classic monster movies, right? And I guess Michael Myers, he's more of a slasher, but he's this shape, he's this
the shape.
Force.
That's what they wanted to call him. Yeah, that's right. He's the
absolutely.
shape.
And he represents. He's not just a guy in a mask. He represents bigger ideas than that. He's a necessity to the story. He's the story called for that kind of monster.
Mm-hmm. I believe in the original Halloween, I think they didn't even want to call him Michael Myers, right? It was just I think, isn't he credited as the shape or the figure? I don't know. It's like they had a plan with that. Like he's not just a guy in a mask. You're right. He's the embodiment of evil, pure evil. Even though it's a very simple monster, it's just this guy with a mask, but he's going to come kill you, and you cannot reason with him.
He's coming for you.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think you're right. He was credited as the shape, which makes me think that John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, who I think helped Carpenter write it, they had that in mind. They knew full out that this wasn't just, your standard slasher.
Oh, yeah.
They knew what they were doing.
And Carpenter, he plans. There's a lot of planning in his films. Even in this bullshit kind of seemed kind of funny, like Little Trouble in China. Shit. Oh fuck.
Big Trouble in Little China.
Big Trouble in Little China. Even that, you watch it the first time, you're like, what the fuck is this movie about? Oh, it's about a dude in his truck. It's like there's layers to it. If you want to go through it, it doesn't make it. At first, it doesn't make any sense, but then you start realizing, wait a second. I don't know. Oh. Anyway, so we talked about your monsters. Let's dig into that a little bit more. What was the best monster you created? Like the one that really pushed you?
So I submitted a story to it was like an audio podcast, right? They were looking for stories that they were going to like read out loud, do like an audio narration for.
Right.
And they put out, the way that the podcast did it was they put out basically what they wanted your story to be about. So in this one, they wanted it set in an old folks home, which I thought was kind of interesting. Yeah. And I'm like, a story in an old folks home, like, how am I going to come up with something like that? So, I got to thinking, and of course, as a horror writer, the first thing I thought of, well, what kind of monster can I unleash on these poor old people? What's the first way I can go with this?
A mummy?
Yeah, right, something like that. And so I ended up going with, they had like a morgue in this old folks home, right? And I don't know anything about old folks homes.
A morgue inside the old folks home? Oh, that's pretty based.
Yeah, I'm like, well, they pass away and they got to go somewhere, right? So, and the way I saw it was, I think in the story I incorporated, it was like a blizzard or something. So the roads were shut down, and a sickness spread through this old folks home, and these older people started dying. And at first, like they were trapped here, and they thought, well, maybe it's just natural causes. But then they started to realize that something was very amiss. And so I wanted to make a monster that was like the embodiment of death and pestilence, right? I wanted this like enormous creature that lives in this morgue. And that story is like 90% monster and like 10% story. So
yeah, you wrote about Corona-chan is what I'm hearing.
Right. It predates Corona, but maybe the story had something to do with it. That's a conspiracy for you.
We get it now.
Yeah,
all these people saying that this came from China, that this came out of a virology lab in China. No. What really happened is it came from you, Logan. It came from you.
I conjured it. Yeah, that's what happened. Only explanation.
Right. Oh man, but that sounds crazy. That sounds wild. Like a story, a monster that is just lurking in the old folks' home, just making them sick.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And that story is it's called Night Shift at the Blue Acres Care Facility.
Oh, I like that.
If people want it. So it's the Hooks of Horror podcast was where you can find that guy.
And those podcasts are very cool. I like them. And there's a lot of them too. There's, a whole bunch. There's a whole list of those sorts of things where they take your story, they pay you for it, hopefully, and they read it. They make it, and they have various people that work with them, do all the voices and all that.
Yeah, I love it. It's really cool. I think that, and I think at the time that one was like kind of a starter. It was like a new podcast, and it was like their second or third episode. So, I think there was like a token payment they were doing, but the story didn't take me long to write. I think it was worth it. It's nice to hear a story is adapted by somebody that really cares, that really, they want your story to sound the best that it possibly can. I think it really brings out new elements to the story.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's a great format because people love audiobooks. People also like podcasts. People also like podcasts where they pretty much read a story to you. I mean, it's
absolutely.
I mean, true crime podcasts is still very popular because people are stuck on that stuff. So if you could give them a true kind of like a true crime thing, but it's like a fictional crime thing, but you have that it's under the guise that it could be real. Oh my God, you got money there, son. You got money.
Yeah, that's a gold mine.
Yep. Okay. Now, we got into this a little bit. What grinds your gears about the writing or horror publishing scene? I think you said the submission process, but is there anything else that really grinds your gears about it could be writing or horror or publishing?
Yeah, I think some of those outdated rules and things for submissions really do get to me. The no simultaneous is like I think that's my biggest thing that just drives me bonkers. And I know we talked about it kind of in length already.
Yeah.
But I think for the writers and especially short story writers where, you have kind of your portfolio of stories that are still looking for a home, and, you don't have time always to write new stuff, right? So the stories, you need to keep them circulating. Especially when like rejection percentages are so high, and that's a big part of the process. Like you're gonna get rejected. There's no way around that. But if you get rejected in a timely manner, then you can just move that story on, to the next place.
Right.
And no simultaneous, they mess it up.
That's one thing I should ask you too. Is how do you handle rejection? Do you get all pissed and you start throwing things? I mean, like, how do you handle it?
I think over time I've developed a thicker skin for the rejection because, I submit out a lot of stories and then I'm lucky if one or two of them get published. And so I try not to take it personally, and I try to remember that it's not necessarily a reflection on you as a writer and you as a person. It's just that wherever you're sending your story to, your story just didn't work for them.
Right.
And for me, I think there's certain rejections that hit harder than others, right? I know if you write the story for a place and you send it in and you wait a few months and hear back, and it can be heartbreaking, especially when you had your hopes up, for this incredible market. But yeah, no, I get rejections like that, and sometimes I just have to, close the email or put it away in another folder and just step away. I have to go do something else, because you do have that moment, even after you've been rejected a billion times, that, you get in your feelings a little bit.
Yeah, man, that moment when you're about to read that email. Is this going to be good? Is this going to be bad? What is it going to be? Oh, God.
Yeah, you see that, the response email to your submission one, and you can't always see what the text is going to be, so you get your hopes up.
You could see a little bit depending what email service you use. It's like, that doesn't look like it's going to be good. I don't know, man.
Yeah. You're like, maybe.
I remember when it was snail mail, and I'd wait forever for a response, and I'd go check the mail with hope and dreams. Okay?
Yep.
Open the mailbox, and there is an empty envelope, practically empty. All what's inside is a card that says rejected.
Rejected. Yeah. And I've only experienced that once or twice, like the physical mail, and like that's a new level of heartbreak because there's a physical element to that. You're
right.
You know, like you said, you're walking out to the mailbox, you're opening the letter. Like that's a few more steps than opening just a simple email.
Be like, my mom said the story was good.
Exactly. Yeah. The people you had to read it before you sent it out loved it, right? But
yeah, I'd take a cold
another
shower
one,
that day.
Yeah, no, exactly. Another one that gets me is some publishers don't like get back to you at all. Like and sometimes they'll say in their guidelines, like, you know, we don't send rejection emails, which I don't know. Why would you do this? That's a great question.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and reveal something. I'm pretty bad at that too. I can make all sorts of excuses. Be like, oh, I'm busy, I'm distracted, I have a bunch of stuff I do. But people see that I stream a lot as well. And streaming takes time too. It does. I mean, I'm not checking emails when I stream. But I'll tell you this much. If I don't respond to your email, it's probably just going to be a rejection. I mean, that's all what it is there. And like I've learned that I could reject someone and tell them what I didn't like about the story, but then they'll say, so if I just change this, you'll accept it? Like, well, no.
It's not that simple, unfortunately.
And then I'm in the position where no matter what I say, I'm going to be the asshole. So it's just like, well, I'll let the silence do it. And if they're accepted, obviously we have a great communication, talk.
Yeah.
But not so much everybody else. But it is what it is. It could be better. It is what it is. It could be better. It should be better. But
yeah, I think this entire process, there's emotions on both sides, and there's expectations all around. And I want to say there's not like 100% right way to, for publishers and editors to accomplish this, because I don't really think there is. I think we're getting to the point where it's semi. Everyone does it a similar fashion, but ultimately it doesn't matter. Stories are getting rejected, they're getting accepted. It's all part of the process.
Right. Now, we have another writing question. We'll kind of move into horror movies here. How fast could you write a story from scratch?
Oh man. So pretty quickly, if I have the need to. I'm not going to say how good that story is, but I'll give some examples. So like there was a website that was around for a few years. I think it's been shuttered now, but they used to hold writing challenges. And I'm scrolling down here to, it's called the Writers Arena.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, so essentially what they would do was you'd send some stories to them, basically to like be accepted into their cadre of writers. And if they liked your work, then you'd be included. And you would they pick two of the writers from their cadre, and they'd say, okay, here's your prompt, right? And it'd be something, pretty generic. I think one of the times I did it, it was just like sand. Like write a story about sand.
About sand.
And then about sand, yep. And you have 1 week to do it. And then both writers would submit their story back, and they'd feature it on the website. And then people would vote on which story they liked better. And then there would be a winner at the end of this.
Oh, that's tough.
It was cool, but and like I said, a week to write and edit a story. Especially when you don't, you receive that prompt and you have to run out the door and get writing. That's challenging.
And how long is a short story we're talking about?
So I think I'm trying to remember what the actual word count was. I think it was up to like a couple thousand words.
Okay. So like 2,000, 3,000. Okay.
Yeah. And I think I did 2 or 3 stories for them, and they were probably within that range, 1,500 to 3,000 words.
Okay. Hey, that's pretty cool. And this story about sand, was it good?
I mean, I liked it. Yeah, it won. So that'll tell you something. I left when they shuttered the website. I left with a winning record, which don't want to brag on myself, but
no. When I said it was good, I'm saying, is it gonna be adapted into a movie? Like they already have a horror movie called The Beach. Is it? No, it's called The Sand. About the sand at the beach killing, killing bobacious babes. So is it like that?
So No, not really. No bodacious babes, unfortunately.
So a
But
bunch of hunks, a bunch of dudes,
a bunch of
beefcakes.
hunks, yeah. So,
Okay.
so this one, I was living in, I was stationed in New Mexico at the time,
Okay.
and a big thing there was sandstorms. So like
that's
the
nice.
wind would get whipped up, and if you were outside, you had sand in your eyes and in your clothes, and it could be pretty brutal. And so I wrote a story that incorporated a sandstorm and then some vengeful ghosts, and so that was.
That's cool. That's a nice way to do it. That's cool. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. All right. And I also have another question from Sam Noble. And this kind of segues, will get us into horror movies here. Also, do you think you'll ever direct a film based on one of your stories?
Oh gosh, that would be incredible. Yeah, no. To reveal a little bit about myself here, when I wanted to go to film school originally to direct, many years ago when I graduated. I've kind of moved on from that, but if the opportunity arose, 100%, that the money would definitely have to be there, and I don't know who in their right mind would let me direct a film, but I would in a heartbeat.
Well, I mean, they let Rob Zombie direct Halloween and Halloween 2. I mean, they might as well let anybody.
Might as well let anybody in, yeah. Yeah, the zombie on those Halloween films.
Not a fan, huh?
Not a fan of those, unfortunately.
Every now and then I get someone on the show that is a fan, and I'm like, man, if I can get them and those that are on the other side together on the same stream, that'd be great. Debate.
We can have a debate.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah,
I'll just play the middle guy.
And Rob Zombie does have a couple good movies. I don't think he's a terrible director. I think he definitely has some odd taste and odd choices. But I mean, House of a Thousand Corpses, that movie's brutal.
Oh yeah, and I like the brutal stuff. Like that's the Rob Zombie way, is being brutal. That edge. He's a product of what he's seen. He grew up watching in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so he wanted to recreate that. Essentially, that's kind of what that movie is. But of course, you get down to what's underneath the house, Dr. Satan, and all that shit. Oh my god!
Oh yeah, no,
that's when the movie gets all bizarre.
Yeah, I love it when horror movies or horror stories, like they kind of take a kitchen sink approach. They'll take Texas Chainsaw, and they'll take demonic and underground mutant monsters, and they kind of just throw them all together. And I love that. That's always a blast.
Like someone like Rob Zombie, he could direct I'm surprised he hasn't done this already. Create his own Saw franchise. He could just do that.
Oh,
he
yeah.
He likes
Oh, yeah.
torture stuff. He could just do that. Have Sherry Moon play the person who entraps all the men, and then they wake up, and then they find that they're tied to some machine that rips their dick off or something. So yeah, there you go, Rob.
There you go. That's an idea for free. That's for you, Rob.
Yeah, for free. I just want to be part of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Have me in the movie. Okay, so what is your favorite horror movie and why?
All right, so I feel like I wanted to give two answers a little bit on this. I'm going to cheat just a tad, because I think we have like horror movies that we love that aren't as universally loved. So I'm going to go with the one that is the easy answer, and that's Kubrick's The Shining. I think that film is basically perfect. I think it's not the best adaptation of Stephen King's work, but for me, when I sit down to watch a horror movie, I want Kubrick's kind of cold, detached, horror style. Absolutely love it.
I like how you put that there. Not the best adaptation of Stephen King, but it's a solid film. It is a good film, The Shining, and even Stephen King doesn't like that film.
He hates it. Yeah.
Yeah, which is weird because, man, that was not the best adaptation, but one of the best movies based on Stephen King. I mean, what is the best adaptation of a Stephen King film or Stephen King book?
Probably Shawshank Redemption.
Really?
Maybe?
You don't think
I think that.
Wait. Are you telling me Dark Tower is not the best?
Oh, don't even get me started on McConaughey in that movie. I can't. Yeah.
No, let's get started because McConaughey is the best part of that movie. All right. Yeah. McConaughey for me I
is
keep
so
getting
hit or
older. They
miss
stay
as
the
an
same
actor,
age. All right.
They stay the same age. And Idris Elba is like as Roland. Like I think that's pretty good casting, but it just there's nothing to that movie. They took one of the most incredible fantasy series ever written, and they turned it into whatever that was.
A series. They took a series and turned it into one movie. Hollywood took a series and turned it into one movie. I mean, where was Stephen King on that? He could have said,
where was it? Yeah.
I have 3 books. Why don't we have 3 movies? Crickets.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hollywood loves, man, if they have a way to milk something, they would have loved that. Where was King on that, huh? King, the reason why people love Kubrick's movie is because he looked at your book and was like, well, I'm going to do my thing with it. Okay? And people are going to love it. And they loved it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Shit. I wonder what happened.
It blows my mind. And especially when you'll have the Hobbit films where they took this, relatively slim fantasy story and turned it into 3 colossal movies.
Right? Oh yeah, they really stretched that one. The Hobbit was stretched.
Yeah, they milked it for everything they could. And those movies I think definitely suffer for it.
Yeah. And the CG kind of suffers too.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Man. Okay.
But another movie I want to talk about too, I mentioned I have sort of 2. And I think everybody might have a movie that they always want to fight people over, to defend. And I think in my case, my other favorite horror movie is Shutter Island, Scorsese's.
Shutter Island, is that the one that's based? Was that the one that's based on a Japanese film by a similar name?
No. So that one I think is just called Shutter.
Oh, that's just Shutter. Okay.
Yeah.
Shutter Island.
So
remind me
Shutter
of this
Island.
one.
It's Martin Scorsese directed it, and then it's Leonardo DiCaprio is the lead, and then it also has Mark Ruffalo in it as well. But essentially, the kind of tagline for it is DiCaprio is a federal marshal, and he gets put out on a case at an asylum, and this is set in the 50s, an asylum on an island called Shutter Island. There's a missing woman there who she was in a room, all the doors were locked, and somehow she went missing. And so, it's this really interesting plot where essentially he's playing detective, at this decrepit, stormy island, this asylum here. And it's one of my favorite Scorsese films.
Yeah, see, I need to check that one out. See, one reason why I like doing hard talk radio is obviously talking hard. The other reason why I like doing it is when we talk about films, there's plenty of films I haven't seen yet. And it's like, okay, I didn't put that on a list, something I need to watch. Now, do you have a particular genre that's like your favorite when it comes to horror?
Ooh, trying to think here. I guess I don't know if it's a genre or not, but I like horror movies that are have big themes to them. I do like slasher films, but that's probably not one of my favorites. But
not your speed.
I think of not my speed. Yeah, I think of movies like The Babadook or Hereditary. Yeah, these films that are they're almost dramas. They're like drama adjacent.
Oh yeah, especially Hereditary. Yeah.
Especially Hereditary. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to kill that fucking kid. If that mom would have went up to that kid and just stabbed him, I would have been like, yeah, that's it. That's the end of the movie. Because
yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're good. I've seen so many memes centered around that kid, and they always crack me up because that kid might be one of the most annoying children in cinema. He's up there.
Yeah, dude. Like, douchebag stoner, only thinks about himself, wants to get fucking laid and just get high all the time. He killed his disabled sister.
Yeah, that was brutal. It was like the telephone pole or whatever.
Yeah, he decapitated her.
Oh, yeah. That movie dropped my jaw to the floor. Like we went and saw it in theaters when it came out, and it blew my mind. I'm like, this movie it goes some places here.
See, every family's different. I'd imagine maybe another family, maybe one in Texas, that it would have ended in a different way. After that scene, it would have turned into like a Saw scenario where the boy is trapped in a contraption of called a shotgun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
get out of this one.
It definitely could have gone a different way. Yeah.
apparently, son, you are a complete. You're an awful human being. You're a nightmare. You know, your mom wanted to abort you. I said no, and we regret that. So now we're gonna do it here, the shotgun here.
We're gonna take care of it right this moment. Yeah,
Jesus
exactly.
Christ. Okay. So you like horror movies with much more depth, kind of bigger stuff.
Yeah,
those are fun.
absolutely.
I mean, they definitely have more layers to kind of explore. Cool. What about paranormal films? Do you like them?
I do, yeah. Really, anytime we can roll with kind of occult stuff, and it's, of course, all of the like the Satanist, like devil stuff. That's always fascinating. But
oh yeah,
I also love it when we get to have like, different deities and Lovecraftian whatevers. That kind of stuff is great.
Well, sure, yeah, that stuff is fun. But when I'm thinking paranormal, of course, I'm thinking like ghost movies, like
oh yeah,
like Paranormal Activity.
Yeah, no. I just watched Halloween. We just left October, so of course I'm sure you did the same. Watched a ton of horror movies.
Oh yeah.
I watch them all year long, but October's a special time. But I watched one this year. So I just moved to the United Kingdom. I live in the UK, and there's a horror film that has this huge following that is a UK thing that I finally got a chance to watch since I moved here, and it utterly blew my mind. I'm beyond impressed about this movie, and I've been preaching to everybody that they need to see it. And it's called Ghost Watch.
Ghost Watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have not seen that.
It's kind of hard to find. I ended up buying like a DVD from like Amazon UK, and it ran on my thing. But a lot of people told me I think it's on the Internet Archive as well. You can stream it off of there.
Now, is this like an older film or?
So yeah, it's a little older. So it was made for TV by the BBC, and I want to say it was 80s or 90s. I honestly don't know off the top of my head, but it was made for TV. But it's this really fascinating War of the Worlds situation, in that the BBC created like a ghost hunting show for this movie, and they didn't really advertise that well to the English people that the movie wasn't real. So in Ghost Watch, so people thought this thing was real because it was this crew of ghost hunters that go into this house in this British suburb and essentially are investigating this paranormal activity. And this film is terrifying. It's utterly unbelievable.
Now that sounds cool. Definitely give that a shot. Put that on the list too. Sweet.
Yeah, highly recommend it.
All right. Now, wrap this up back to the writing and kind of getting towards the end here. Now, another question. Now, I guess as a family member, not going to really get into all that, but if someone wants to know, someone close to you, which one of your stories you would want to make into a movie if you got a chance.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I had a story called The Matron in the Wood that was published, I think it was a year or two ago. Pete Rawlick, who's like a big Lovecraftian guy, he put out an anthology called The Chromatic Court. And the whole premise of the anthology was, so we talked about King in Yellow earlier, right?
Yes.
So his idea was, what if the King in Yellow was just the head of a court of similar kind of like deities, right? And he basically said, pick a color, and like kind of create a deity, using that kind of motif.
Okay. So it's like King of Yellow. It's like King of Yellow and then King of Red, King of Purple, something like that.
So he wanted people to do more like the Queen of, or like the Priest of. So essentially you're building this like, mythology of, there's the king and then all of his kind of lackeys and like fellow royals beneath him.
Yeah, look at me. I'm such a chauvinist here. Not even thinking of the queen. The queen.
The guy of the queen. Yeah.
Queen of Red? Is she red?
Maybe, yeah.
I bet she is. I bet she's a bloodsucker too.
Guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that story was kind of more of like, I don't want to say monster story, but I think it had like idea that would lend itself to movies pretty well.
That's cool. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, with all your stories out there, I'm sure you received some feedback. What are some of the highlights of that feedback?
I always love it when I get some kind of, when I get a rejection, but it comes with, some feedback. That's a rare thing to get. And for my fellow writers out there, I'm sure you know this, like, getting a form rejection, just a generic email is one thing, but when you actually have them say, hey, we liked your story. However, we think you have some faults here. I had a story that I was shopping around for many years that it wasn't getting picked up.
Oh,
and
man.
Yeah, and it got rejected like 10 times, and I kept re-editing it and changing things in it, and working hard. It just wasn't clicking. And eventually, an editor, they didn't accept the story, but they took the time to write like a very lengthy kind of like, these are all the things you're doing wrong here. And this was early in my writing career. So, I took all of that stuff. They basically pointed out like, your plot doesn't make sense here. Like your grammar's a little weird. It's this long list of stuff. And I took that advice and ended up, editing the story. And then I got it published the next time I submitted it, which was, incredible feeling.
That is a great feeling right there.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
yeah.
What about feedback from the readers, from people who read your work?
So, somebody reached out to me a little while ago as another author, and he basically read The Mouth That Opens. We kind of talked about that at the beginning of the podcast here.
That's right.
And he liked it so much, he asked if he could use the film in his own story as kind of like a callback type situation.
Cool.
Which, to me, like, I no issue with that whatsoever, right? Creative property is definitely a thing, but if anybody reaches out to me and says, hey, we like this character or like this idea, can we kind of name drop it in the story? Absolutely. I don't think there's a higher form of, like flattery than writers collaborating like that.
Right. The collaboration is great. It gets muddled when someone wants to try to claim ownership. Now, I think the person who should claim ownership would be the original person, which would be you.
Sure.
Hope they would respect that, and of course, that's a conversation you guys would have, behind the scenes. Now, but yeah, that sort of response, that sort of communication, wanting to collaborate. That's great. Definitely jump on that.
Love it. Yeah.
Man, that's cool. That's cool. All right. Well, Logan Noble, it was great having you on Horror Talk Radio. We got to spend some time talk about your stories, got where to start, where to find your work. Talked about the horror writing process, submissions, and horror movies. It was great having you on. Ladies and gentlemen, if you made it this far, please press the like button, share, and subscribe. It really helps out a lot. A lot of these streams on YouTube are not monetized or whatever, which I don't care. I don't do this for the money, obviously. But what that does mean is that YouTube doesn't recommend it or whatever, how the system works. So if you like this, if you want other people to hear about it, that's the ball's in your court, pretty much, is what I'm saying there. So do your thing if you like it, man. Spread it on Twitter or Facebook, whatever. You don't have to ask my permission. You can spread it around. Let the message go.
Let it go. Absolutely.
All right. We'll go ahead and wrap up the stream here. And the next show on Friday is going to be a pretty big horror trivia, giving out it should be just $100, but depending on how intoxicated I get during that, it might be more than that. We'll see. But $100 cash. All you need to know is horror movies and horror. And what it is it's a call-in. You call in with the Discord link, which I'll provide in the chat, and you use that link. You call in, you test your horror knowledge. And every question you get right is $2. It's $2, man. Look at that.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's gonna be this Friday at 9:30. All right. Anyway,